So basically, what he was saying is that the American people really have to be on board with going to a nuclear war with China. And so he actually responded to Anya and he said, yes, it means that. Let me tell you what she said here first. Okay, so she retweeted that. He said, yes, it means that a president must be bold and fearless and willing to consider all courses of action against any adversary. But it must be explained to the American people and they must be part of any action. Go back and read the General Powell Doctrine from the first Gulf War. So this guy is telling people, this is a heads up. General Keith Kellogg, he is already announcing, and he said this on Fox News, that the American people need to get behind the idea of the U.S. going to a nuclear war with China in order to defend Taiwan. How ridiculous is this?
And this is another example, and I actually want to play my clip after Savage done. Come on, relates to this because I'm gonna show you guys a clip from MSNBC. Funny you showed a clip from Fox News. Now we can get the other side, MSNBC, and you see the same thing. I brought this up when I was talking to Glenn Greenwald. How you have the U.S. media that's cheering on and trying to have our already crazy politicians and warmongers in charge. They edging them more. Like you had MSNBC claiming that our politicians are not doing enough, not sending more weapons to Ukraine. And in this segment that you share, Savvy, you have some retired general on Fox News essentially telling our politicians to be even more unhinged. Like, and not like whenever the politicians are not pro-war enough for the weapon industry, they'll have their goons that is sponsored on news stations like Fox News and MSNBC and say, oh my God, Joe Biden has been soft on China, right? What Joe Biden not sending enough weapons to Ukraine. Even though that publicly the United States has said they don't want a nuclear war, you got people in the media said, why don't we edge on the nuclear war? Do you guys see the media's role in egging on and pushing the politicians to become more militaristic? As bad as our politicians already are, the media in our country, they are the biggest war hawks, the biggest cheerleaders for war.
But I think, too, what people have to understand, just a reminder, the U.S. has already escalated these tensions because let's go back to when Nancy Pelosi went to Taiwan. Like she knew what she was doing when she did that. She was choosing the side. So the U.S. government has already escalated those tensions, and he's actually calling for an all-out war, which is insane. It would be insane for us to go to war with China, especially at this point in time. Look, we already have one conflict with Russia and Ukraine. We're already sending billions and billions of dollars out the door to Ukraine. And now he's already talking about we need to get ready for another a type of war, a nuclear war, he says.
Yeah. So in retrospect, when he said this, the only way that you can get the American people on board is through a massive propaganda campaign. But in order for you to do that, in order to get people on board, you would need an event to happen that would make the American people get on board. Why were we in the Middle East? Because there was a major event that forced people to get on board propaganda-wise that we saw. I'm not saying that it was a propaganda event, but like one so I think somebody was in the cabinet member, I think for President Bush, it might have been Donald Rumsfeld, who said, never let a crisis go to waste.
Yeah.
Donald Rumsfeld was actually saying that about 9/11. So therefore, they used that as a cudgel to get us into the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, the war in Syria, the war in Libya. They're trying to get and do things to Iran. Right now, we're in a proxy war with Ukraine. These are really due to a crisis over 20 years ago that they did not let go to waste. And because of this, they're now going to try to get us on board to go to war with China because, and the United States, people don't want to do this. But in order to do that, they have to drum up some type of fervor to make us go, oh, no, they mess with us. We got to go. We got to go.
Yeah,
So
we need.
it's just like,
Mhm.
Yeah, we
Not to
need critical.
mention,
Go ahead, Fabi. Go ahead, Fabi.
not to mention, you already have some Americans that are still angry at China because of the pandemic. So this is something we had to deal with like a year ago, where there were students on campus, Asian students on campus, that were being violently attacked because of the pandemic. So you already have that sentiment among some Americans. So they're going to try to find something else to get everybody else on board. Watch.
Yeah, and you have Democrats who complain about the rise of anti-Asian hate crimes as they constantly fearmonger and spread anti-Chinese propaganda through the airwaves, and they think they have no effect on people. Like I see liberals all the time on social media, on Twitter, that sound just like hardcore neocons when it comes to China.
Yeah.
Talking about authoritarian this, that we need to intervene in Taiwan this. Literally the most insane. We need critical solidarity with China right now. Because Savvy, I'm glad you shared this retired general on Fox News, and it's very, very scary that you have these people going out and saying these things publicly, openly. Now on Fox News, this is an interview in the Financial Times with a top Marine general where they just have a casual conversation like, yeah, what we do, we got to build up war against China, and after we get done with Russia and Ukraine, just casually talking about global war. Let me read this quote. The U.S. and Japanese armed forces are rapidly integrating their command structure and scaling up combined operations as Washington and its Asian allies prepare for a possible conflict with China, such as a war over Taiwan. What?
Mm-hmm.
Taiwan is a part of China. That has been U.S. policy to acknowledge that. The United States flipping on this issue shows how they are the aggressor. And we need to, and as Americans, this should be our top priority. This is why I talk about this all the time. And I'm glad you brought this up, Savvy. This is one of the biggest stories. In Japan, I always got to say this. I had to remind them, who dropped the nuke on you? They are literally a colony of the United States, still occupied by the United States. Their global geopolitical politics is dominated and suggested by the United States, and they treat China like it's the U.S. You should be teaming up with China to take out the U.S. Mm-hmm. And the audacity, anyone who knows history, the audacity of Japan being aggressive against China after their crimes in World War II, after the rape of Nanping. Are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. And they're back. Now the formerly Imperial Japan is now rebuilding the military. I'll just read this headline. I'll pass back to you guys because it's kind of round the segment up because this new alliance is forming. Imperial Japan is back. Militaristic Germany is back. Nazi supporting Germany is back. Biden and Kishida to bolster U.S.-Japan alliance amid China's growing power. What is their crime, guys? What is the crime of China? They're growing. What? We're going to wage war against this country because they're growing.
Yeah.
Ahead,
you know,
yeah.
No, I just wanted to bring out the fact that, a lot of times people go, well, RBN, what is the solution? And one of the things that I have become privy to is that there's also some anti-war rallies that are emerging. One of them is being the Wage Against the War Machine rally that's happening in Washington, D.C. I think it's February 19th. Is it, Sabby?
Yeah, it's President's Day weekend. I'll be there. It's a lot of people are going to be at that one.
Yeah. So the part of that is if, people ask, well, what is one of the solutions? It is mass movements and getting out there to rallies like this. I, unfortunately, number one, don't have the financial means, and plus I don't have the physical means to be able to go to things like this. But if you have the means to attend rallies like this, then it's good because those numbers bring eyes. And that as those movements grow, it shows. And really, this is, no more war, proxy war with Russia, no more wars that in the Middle East and the global South, no more them trying to provoke a war with China. If you, really care about these things, if you can get out there or have the bandwidth to get out there, then by all means do it.
I was going to show you guys.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead,
Go ahead.
CJ. I was just going to show you guys, it's not really about Taiwan. I'm going to show you what it's really about, because the U.S. government wants to be number one. They don't want any other country to pass the U.S. And when you look at things economically, you'll see what the real problem is. These are the top 10 banks in the world. So if you look at the top 10 banks in the world, China, number 3, number 4, Bank of China, number 5, BNP, JP Morgan Chase Bank is number 6. None of the U.S. banks are even in the top 5, and it wasn't always this way. And if you go down to the top 10, you'll see the first column is current rank, the second column is previous rank. So if you look at the first column, you'll see Bank of America is number 10. So if you're looking at the top 10 banks in the world, the U.S. only has 2 in the top 10, and China has most of the top banks in the world. This is what it's really about. So we have to remember this is more about economic situation here. They're not going to, now the U.S. government is going to say that, because then people will be like, oh, what the hell? Why not let them, do well economically? But this is what people really need to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why they bring the China threat. We talk about this all the time, CJ. I'll pass it to you. They bring it all the time when we breaking down propaganda. They said China is being aggressive. China is a threat to American interests. And we like, how? How are they a threat to our interests? They're talking to themselves. China is a threat to their dominance. They're a threat to their status as the top hegemon. They're not talking about us, but they want you to fill in the gaps. So when they say that China is a threat, they want you to fill in the gaps with xenophobic, fear-mongering bullshit. We're like, oh shit, China's a
propaganda
ploy. They're gonna invade fucking San Diego.
It's a propaganda ploy. The way it works is you create the condition to where it makes it believable. So it's a completely separate story. You'd be like, look at COVID over here. Look at this over here. So then when you say this and you say they're a threat, you don't need to say what the threat is. You've said a bunch of other things about them in other stories, and that's how it all creates the fertile ground for
they will say stuff like China's expanding their geopolitical influence, and they'll say that like a boogeyman, but what they're really doing is just trading more than us. They don't explain that. They just say a fact, and they want you to fill in what that means. So when they say China is expanding their geopolitical influence, you think debt trapping. You think what we're doing when they got military on the shores. That's what the average person filling in. But what they're really doing is just making fucking deals with countries that are tired of doing business with the West. Sorry, go ahead.
Let me share a couple of things. An article and a short video is on the same topic because we've been meaning to do a segment on this, and we haven't been able to. So, but this is the same topic. So let's insert this section of this article. And the title of the article is on the World Socialist website, U.S. and Japan accelerate war drive against China. So speaking to the video that Sabby played earlier, what is it? Keith Kellogg. And the next thing I have is a video of him talking about China. And it's 5 months ago, and it's almost like it could be today. Oops. That's where it says both. Right here. Both Washington and Tokyo are deliberately undermining the basis for diplomatic ties with China. The one China policy under which the two countries have in the past de facto recognized Beijing as the legitimate government of all China, including Taiwan. By boosting ties with Taipei, I think that's how you say it, Taipei, and thereby encouraging it to declare formal independence from China, the U.S. and Japan are goading Beijing to reassert its control of strategic island militarily. The U.S.-led war on Russia in Ukraine is the opening phase and preparation for the conflict against China, which American imperialism openly declares is the greatest threat to its global dominance. The accusation incessantly repeats that China undermines the international rules-based order.
Whatever that means.
Refers to the post, and I remember that conversation. Refers to the post-World War II order in which the U.S. dictates the rules. The U.S. is aiming to shore up its global position by securing control over the vast natural resources and labor reserve of Eurasia land mass. And it was another segment that we did a long time ago where they were talking about how hegemony or the top country is usually controls the Eurasia mass, and that's what that's where the United States is sort of targeting now. Now let me show you the other thing I wanted to show you, which is a short video. Since you weren't able to hear, some people weren't able to hear Keith in the initial video. Let's just hear, because in the first 40 seconds, he talks about how China is the greatest threat to the United States.
Yeah, go ahead.
Fox News contributor Keith Kellogg is former national security advisor for President Trump and Vice President Pence. Good to have you here. So I just want to read this to you, that they said, the foreign minister, that China has used the drills to prepare for this invasion of Taiwan. Do you think that's what they're doing?
Hi, Dana, and thanks for having me this morning. The short answer is yes. Look, we look at China, and we should look at China as the greatest threat we faced in the last 50 years. When you look at China,
come on, man,
militarily led by a very authoritarian president and President Xi, and they've clearly got Taiwan in their crosshair. This is a crisis that's going to go over the next 2 years. I believe that President Xi believes this is an opportunity within the next 2 years to actually accomplish something with Taiwan, because I think he sees the president being weak when it comes to international relations and national security. So
this is the Democrats' weak on China argument, and I'll let everybody chime in. We're going to watch most of this. I just wanted everybody to kind of hear him clearly, Keith, talk about how China is just this biggest threat. And this was 5 months ago. And like I said, this could have been a video today. Sabby, Nick, JB, go ahead, whoever.
Look at this guy in the glasses in the suit. I'll pass it to you, JB. I'll be real short here. Look at this guy in the glasses in the suit. He looks so professional, doesn't he? That guy is the most dangerous person walking the world right now. He's the biggest terrorist. What Americans would think as what a terrorist would look like, that's what it looked like. That is the face of evil. That is the face of destabilization. But go ahead, JB, because
him saying this dude saying that Taiwan is in China's crosshairs is like China saying that Alaska is in the United States crosshairs. Make that make sense. Make that make sense. Because here's the crazy part. How would Alaska be in the crosshairs of the United States if Alaska is already part of the United States? That's like us, having military operations and saying, oh, well, it looks like they're prepared to go to war and take over Alaska.
The U.S. has sites on Puerto Rico. It's like we got sites on Puerto Rico. There's a Puerto Rican.
We got sites on Puerto Rico.
There's a Puerto Rican separatist movement that's not supported by no member of Congress. So it's the same thing. Imagine if they say, "Oh, China can easily say, oh my God, the United States is eyeing Puerto Rico." But go ahead, JB.
No, but it's crazy. It's almost like, well, China could say, well, we need to liberate the Boricuas, right? Because they're being taken by, American imperialism, American colonialism. And to be honest with you, they will be well within their right, because they can go to Puerto Rico and go, hey, look, the United States took you guys by force. Guess what? We're here to liberate you guys. And what really could the United States say in actual legal defense? Absolutely nothing. And so for them to go and say, well, we need to liberate Taiwan. Taiwan is already a part of China, and the United States has recognized that Taiwan is a part of China for years. And so now the United States is going to move the goalpost now, even though the United States has done way more imperialism than China could ever do. It's just wild. See, people need to start looking at things, looking at it from a perspective of from the outside. because people keep making concessions and conceding the United States position when the United States has actually been the aggressor for 150 years.
And I want to have a conversation because this is what we have. We need to discuss what it means to be just anti-war versus being anti-imperialist. You guys see the imperialist agenda, the fight for the hegemon dominance by the U.S., NATO, and the West. There's so many of these white boutique leftists. These are the NATO leftists. They say, "Oh, I'm anti-war. Oh, I don't like violence. Oh, wow, congratulations. Give him a medal. That's the easiest leg to stand on. Who isn't anti-war? People see war and I don't like that. It's easy to be anti-war. What's the difference between being anti-war and being anti-imperialist? Being anti-imperialist, living in the global hegemon, living in the U.S. empire, is resisting U.S. attempts to wage war against China, against Russia. We should be speaking out against this unhinged aggression against China and Taiwan and what they're doing in Ukraine. What the NATO left, they do the exact opposite. They are cowards. They are cowards. Being anti-war without being anti-imperialist means absolutely nothing. These people are like, oh my God, I hate war. I condemn Putin because he invaded Ukraine, but they send weapons to Taiwan. Bernie Sanders, every single coward in Congress did that. AOC did that as well. Pramila Jayapal, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar. They all voted to send weapons to Taiwan. They are not anti-imperialist. They are pro-imperialist because they're helping the U.S. and Western hegemon wage war against their enemies. On RBN, I stand in solidarity unapologetically with China because I am not supportive of the U.S. hostile actions against that state. That's what it means to be anti-imperialist versus anti-war. And the reason why RBN have our fangs out against so many fake leftists that we call out all the time, because they are imperialist scumbags, like on Breaking Points, who constantly repeats pro-imperialist lies about China. Crystal Ball has allowed Saiger to rile up hatred towards China and to justify U.S. aggression against China. You are pro-imperialist and you are an enemy of the global working class if you're against China. I'm not saying to be a cheerleader for the state. I'm telling you, we must resist the Western aggression against China.